Welcome everybody to another episode of our comprehensive training series called SEP Knowledge Booster. For this video I have the pleasure to hand over to you today's presenter Klaus, who will talk about the next hot topic with the SEP Sesam backup software. 3, 2, 1, launch!
So, the today presentation, we will talk about deduplication. And to be honest, deduplication is a well-known topic, omnipresent. And every backup software is talking about deduplication, and every hardware vendor has some deduplication functionality. And in this webinar, I will talk about deduplication a little bit from the beginning. What is deduplication? Because we needed to reduce the amount of data we transfer over the wire, the amount of data we put on the disk storage, and what are all the associated parameters and functionalities related to deduplication. After some slides, I will show you a little bit of a live demonstration how this topic is covered in our backup software SEP Sesam, and you will see what options we have available. So, first of all, what are the benefits using deduplication, especially with our backup software? And first of all, it saves a lot of disk storage. So this saves a lot of money for you. If you use deduplication, it reduces the amount of data you put on disk storage. But it also saves bandwidth, because depending on where the deduplication will be processed, you reduce the amount of data you transport over the network. And this provides some more options for backup concepts and so on. You will see this later on. Deduplication also enables a functionality called replication, because if you only transfer changed blocks to another location, it reduces the data dramatically, and you could have a copy of your data by replicating the data to another location, even if there is only a WAN connection with low bandwidth. That's possible by using deduplication. And this is very often used for cloud connections. If you put your data into the cloud, then of course you have to transfer the data over the network, and you very often have low bandwidth. Yeah, and then there are different algorithms for doing deduplication. So every hardware or software vendor has its own algorithm for deduplication, and they have different parameters, like working with in-memory, post-processing, variable block lengths, fixed block lengths, and so on. These kind of parameters, and we will talk about this in a second as well. Yeah, if we talk about SEP and the benefits of SEP, of course, we have a cool backup software, and our backup software has some deduplication functionalities. In fact, it's a broad set of deduplication functionalities, and they are all well described in our wiki documentation. All our customers are really very, very satisfied about the details, descriptions in our wiki documentation. And if you have any challenges and issues, you can have the help of our high quality support, which knows all these kind of methods and processes pretty well. Yeah, and then our product is flexible in pricing, future-proof, because we have a really broad support matrix, not only talking about deduplication, but all the agents we have available for almost every database or groupware product or operating system or hypervisor and so on. And then it's a product made in Germany, which helps in terms of GDPR for all these kind of formal regulations. And we have a lot of satisfied customers using our software. Here is one customer, our success story, the Genossenschaftsverband of Bayern, which is kind of a financial IT in Germany for a set of banks. And in this project, we have several agents for several databases on the front side data. We have Domino as a mailing software, and using VMware as a hypervisor. And this customer introduced our software Deduplication, I guess 5 years ago or 4 years ago, and then they grew dramatically. And after growing a lot, the need popped up to be more scalable, to have more performance, because they have such a huge growth, and therefore they changed the software integrated deduplication into a dedup appliance, the HPE Store ones, which we support via the Catalyst protocol. We will talk about this in a second as well. Yeah, so what is deduplication all about? And let's start with the basics. The basics are that to reduce the amount of data, the algorithm just cuts the data stream into chunks, yeah, like here the A, B, C, B, C, A, and it creates a hash, a checksum of each block, and looks in the table if this block is already there, or if it has to transfer the new block. And you see the A, it's already there, so there will be a pointer to this existing block. The B is already there in the dedup source, so it's only a pointer. There is A again, another pointer to this block A. Nothing will be transferred for data, but then we will have a new block of data C, and this one has to be transferred to the dedup storage. Will be a pointer will be set. B is the next pointer, C is the next pointer to this new block, which is now already there. It doesn't have to be transmitted again, and with A it's the same. So this is the algorithm, how it works with deduplication, just to reduce it like the alphabet to a set of letters, and only pointing to these letters to find the contents of this data stream. So that's the basic. Now we would like to talk about global deduplication. What does it mean if we talk about global deduplication? And first of all, it's important to know that this works for all kind of data, no matter if it's file data, if it's database data, if it's applications, any kind of applications, groupware products, snapshots, NDMP, and whatever you might have as a data stream. Whatever comes into the backup server or to the backup appliance, you can deduplicate. So the next is that it's permanent. If you set up a dedup store, then it works permanent, and it will never reset and start from scratch. Of course, there is some sort of garbage collection to remove the blocks where no pointer points to. Then they are useless, they are obsolete, and you can delete these blocks. So this is kind of a process, putting everything in order. That's the garbage collection. But it never restarts. Yeah? It never starts from scratch. It's permanent, and the algorithm is always working the same. Look at this. It's always the same algorithm. Now, D was a new block. It works with a new block, and the rest will be pointed with every next data stream. So if you have ever saved or made a backup of a machine with Windows 10 installed, and you back up a second machine with Windows 10 from whatever location, you back up the data stream to the backup server, it will be deduplicated because it also already has all the blocks of this Windows 10 operating system, and you will have a very good dedup ratio because it's almost the same kind of data. Yeah, then we have the replication, and the replication is kind of a copy of the dedup store with all the blocks and all the pointers, and it only transfers new blocks to the replication site so that the copy is always as synchronized as possible. This will be done via schedule. It's not a continuous data protection, but if you have a schedule which runs every hour or every half an hour, then it always comes closer to continuous data protection because it's always up to date then. Then we have the source side deduplication, and this also works on this global dedup store. Yeah, we have a lot of data on the client, and if these blocks of data are already there, like the ABCD, only the new data, the new blocks will be transferred, like the E, and only the new block will be stored in the dedup store on the backup server. So this is the source side deduplication. And then with our software and the schedules based on media pools, you can really set up a complete mesh of replicating and source side deduplication end to end, which could be a back replication. If you have with this RDS in another location, other clients which do their backup into this dedup store, you can back replicate and have these blocks also in the data center to have a copy for disaster recovery in the data center of this RDS as well. So they are both synchronized in both directions. Or you could set up another RDS in another location and also replicate to this so that you have a second copy or a third copy of your data, and you can have a replication from this RDS to this, some data replicate to this and some other data to this, because you can filter by media pools. Yeah, so this is also possible. And you could have much more clients doing source side deduplication to this or to this, depending what is more appropriate to your backup concept and your environment. So this kind of mesh of deduplication is the basis of global deduplication. It works continuously and never starts from scratch. Yeah, now talking about the software integrated deduplication in our SEP sesam, and here are the facts of SI3, which is the name of our deduplication algorithm, and we have our own name because we have also the patents of this algorithm. It works pretty effective, and it's a software-based deduplication. It's very effective because of the variable block length, which means that we can always adapt the block length to have the most effective match of blocks with already saved blocks in the dedup store. Yeah, and this all works for disk storage only, of course, because not from tape. That's very important. Because for putting together all these data streams from all the blocks and following all the pointers need some random access to your backup target, and therefore it's only possible with disk storage. And it's all inline. It's all in memory. All the pointer tables are held in the memory, and it's no post-processing. With the post-processing, normally you would save the data in original size, and then later on in a later process, it will deduplicate the data. So this post-processing needs more space because you have to save the data in original size first and then deduplicating afterwards. So, of course, the backup server maybe, or the RDS, which is doing the deduplication, this is some workload, some effort which has to be done, and it requires more CPU and more RAM depending on the amount of data you have to deduplicate. And in our wiki, we have the descriptions, what are the requirements regarding CPU and RAM. Yeah, then if the data stream has been cut into chunks, each chunk will be compressed. This also saves a lot of disk storage. And it is also possible to encrypt each chunk. So you have a fully encrypted dedup store. That's also possible. And it's possible to do the replication based on media pools, which means that you can have different retention policies for every copy, for every replica. You can have different end of lifetimes. This is very, very important. And for the replication, you can do an initial seed. Just think of the situation. You have a huge dedup store in your data center, and you set up a replica on another location. Then in the first step, the complete dedup store will be replicated. Every block will be replicated because every block is new. If the replica is empty, every block is new. So the first replication will transfer some amount of data, and depending on the size of your dedup store, this might take time. And you can imagine several terabytes over small bandwidths, because that's the reality why you use replication, because you have a small bandwidth. This might take even days or weeks until the data has been transferred. And therefore we have this functionality for an initial seed, which means you could copy the dedup store in the data center on some maybe USB stick or USB disk, some movable disk, and you can transport the disk physically to the other location and then import it on the other side. So you don't have to transport all the data over the wire. And after you have imported the data, then the replication starts, and from this point on it only transfers new blocks, only delta blocks, and that's possible with the small bandwidth you have. And then it's also possible to put another replica, not to another RDS with another disk storage, but you can also put a replica into the cloud via the S3 interface. This is possible, and this could also have a different retention policy. So if the data is deleted from your local storage, it will be retrieved from the cloud. So these are all the functionalities of our software integrated our own deduplication algorithm. Yeah, and I can tell you also that there are some significant optimizations in our next version. And with the next version, you will have some optimization regarding performance and limitations and so on. And if you would need some of these optimizations today, it's also possible to give you the new version on a special release. You can use it for backup and recovery. It's not possible currently to do a replication or to use the encryption functionality. It's also only running on Linux, so you need to have a Linux RDS, for instance, or a Linux backup server. But if you don't need these other options, then it would be possible to also use this one currently. Just contact me if you need this. Yeah, what are the deduplication options regarding the concepts with our software? First of all, it's possible to use hardware deduplication. Some dedup appliance which is doing the deduplication, that's possible to be used with SEP. Then it's also possible to have some software deduplication, as I've told you about SI3, but there are even more possibilities. So for the hardware, we have, for instance, an HPE Store 1, Fujitsu's Eternus CS800, Quantum DXi, the data domain, or any kind of disk array with deduplication like NetApp or whatever. And they can all be used for as a backup storage, and this kind of deduplication on the hardware is completely transparent to our backup software. We can attach these as VTL or via NFS, or some of them via iSCSI, depending on the functionality of each of these appliances. And these are only some examples. There are much more. QNAP also has deduplication functionality and so on. Now, what are the options if you would like to use software deduplication? Of course, you can use our backup software integrated deduplication, our SI3 algorithm, or it's possible to use the operating system. There are also some deduplication functionalities. If you use Windows, for instance, with the NTFS or the ReFS file system, you could switch on deduplication. It's also completely transparent to our backup software because the operating system is doing the deduplication. It might have sometimes some restrictions, like sometimes it's only post-processing, sometimes you need extra hardware resources, sometimes it's limited in size, you need local volumes, so there might be some restriction. But you would not need any additional licenses regarding the SEP software. So and also with the operating system, I think this functionality is always part of the operating system. No additional cost regarding this one. It's also possible with Linux. There are also some file systems which have deduplication functionality on Linux. Then with the software deduplication, you could use our SI3. It's possible with any kind of direct attached disk. So we really don't care about the performance of the disk storage. We don't care about the hardware vendor and so on. We just use what's there. So we do not make any guarantees regarding deduplication, but you could use whatever is there. So if you need some performance guarantees, some scalabilities, formal SLAs and so on, you should use one of these dedup appliances. Yeah, and we have some medium scalability. If it scales up to huge amount of data, hundreds of terabytes, petabytes and so on, then it's definitely better to use one of these dedup appliances. They have their advantages on this side. Yeah, the deduplication of SI3, it's included in our volume license. You could just switch on deduplication. It's all included. However, you need some extra hardware resources. As I have told you, you need more CPU, you need more RAM, because someone has to do the deduplication work. Now, regarding the hardware deduplication, these are all appliances, dedicated appliances for doing deduplication work. So they have definitely a huge scalability. So I know with the Store Ones, you could save petabytes of data on one dedup appliance, and they have an SLA for this. They guarantee specific performance values, benchmarks, and so on. But therefore, you have a little bit of a higher cost for the dedup appliance because it's hardware plus software bundled. And from the backup software side, we really recommend that you use the volume license model. Just think of it. If it's configured as a VTL and you have thousands of small virtual tapes and you have to license the slots, this could be a significant price for this. But it's all included in the volume license model because you could use as many slots as you like. So it's all included. And the same applies to the if it's attached as a disk storage, like via NFS maybe, then with the classic license model, you have to license the storage pool. And this is a huge amount of data you can put on the dedup storage, because the storage pool license is counted before deduplication. Yeah. So, and it's all included in the volume license model. Yeah, so if you do a replication and the dedup appliance itself is doing the replication, then the backup server has no knowledge of the replica. And you need some proprietary protocols. We will talk about this in a second, like the catalyst copy. this can be triggered by the backup software, and then the backup software has knowledge about the replica. You can restore from the replica directly from the GUI of the backup software and so on. For all these deduplication appliances, we have a specific button in our GUI for the size calculation. Oh, there is a misspelling. I see this, a little typo. I have to change this. A VTL is treated as a real library. We don't know that it's a virtual tape library. We treat it as a real library. We configure it as a physical library, and then VTL normally is only relevant if they are attached via fiber channel. But from our perspective, a LAN attached disk storage, maybe NFS or something alike, is pretty much preferred from our side because it's less management, or you don't have to manage any kind of media and drives and so on. So it's really easy to do this LAN attached configuration. Yeah, and we have references for all these dedup appliances, and we also have Catalyst references. Over here you can find all these references on our homepage. Yeah, then what about these proprietary protocols? You might know that the data domain has a proprietary protocol. It's called DD-Boost. And with this, it's possible to distribute the effort of deduplication. If you attach the data domain as a VTL, then the complete deduplication work is done by the dedup appliance. But the data is transferred in full size over the wire. With the DD-Boost protocol, you can put the deduplication effort on the backup server or on the RDS and only transfer reduced amount of data to the dedup appliance. We do not have the integrated functionality of the DD-Boost. There's some workaround with the DD-Boost FS, which is presented as an NFS file system so that it's transparent for the backup software. That's possible. But the full integration of this kind of similar functionality can be used with a Catalyst for the store once. And this is based on our partnership with HPE. And I can tell you that SEP Sesam has one of the broadest certified Catalyst integration, deepest integration of Catalyst functionality on the market. This can be found in the HPE certification matrix for Catalyst for the store once. And we will talk about this in a second. Now, talking about these two possibilities with our backup software. Now, if you compare the software deduplication with the hardware deduplication, the software deduplication is our own patent. The other one is a different algorithm, a different deduplication algorithm, and it's certified that SAP Sesam can use the store once as a target for backup via the Catalyst interface. We have done the HPE certification for this. Yeah, you need this hardware for the hardware deduplication, of course. You can use it as LAN and VTL, but it's definitely better to use it with the Catalyst protocol. And just to give you a hint, one advantage of the Catalyst protocol is that it's proprietary and that it's safe regarding ransomware and other virus because they cannot access the data via the Catalyst protocol because it's an API programming interface. Then both algorithms work with variable block length. They both are based on global deduplication, and we call it target side if it's done in the backup server. Here we call it Catalyst backup and recovery if we transfer the data to the dedup appliance and let the hardware do the work or let the backup server do the work. We also have the source side deduplication, that the client is doing the deduplication work and only asks if the block is already in the dedup store. And with the Catalyst, it's called Catalyst Bandwidth Optimized, but it's also, if you have some database server, you can put the deduplication work directly on the database server and transfer the deduplicated data via the Catalyst protocol to the store ones. And the replication with the Catalyst, it's called Catalyst Copy. For both alternatives, we provide single file restore, which means you can mount maybe virtual machines, VMDK files for VMware, browse in these mounted data, extract single files or directories for restore, can do a instant recovery of a virtual machine. You can even mount maybe a Exchange database and extract single files from it. So all these kind of mounting functionalities are provided with our software for both deduplication alternatives, instant recovery as well. Now let's talk about the cloud options of these both possibilities. And you will see that they are pretty similar, to be honest. Yeah, we have the possibility with the software to do an application to S3. It's based on our own deduplication algorithm then. However, it needs some local storage. You first have to back up your data in deduplicated format onto your local storage and then replicate it to the cloud. The replication into the cloud to S3 is very cost efficient. You know that every cloud provider has a different license model, how to charge the customer. And sometimes they charge per call, per S3 call. And we have really reduced the amount of S3 calls to make it really cost efficient. The communication to the S3 is optimized. Yeah, then it's an automatic disaster recovery. So if the data is no longer available locally, it automatically restores the data from the cloud into the local storage and provides it for restore. Of course, it's also possible to use a local object storage, some SDS storage, software-defined storage like SEP-based storages like the SUSE Enterprise Storage and others. With an S3 interface, that's also possible. You could have different retention times for the replica in the cloud, and the direct to S3 is currently in work, so we will provide this later on this year. Yeah, and with the store ones hardware, there is a interface called Cloud Bank Storage, so that the store ones could put a replica in the cloud, S3, Azure, Scality, and other interfaces, and this could be triggered by SEP Sesam, by the backup software itself, and you can restore from this to other store ones on another location. That's possible. It needs some local storage as well. It's the same as here. It's based on the store one's appliance. You need this hardware appliance or the virtual appliance. There's also a virtual appliance available for the store ones. It's very easy to configure it in SEP Sesam. We'll show this in the live demo in a second. And it's also possible to have different retention times. So now let's talk about deduplication ratio. Very often, this is kind of a figure to really find out if the deduplication is working very efficient. But when is the deduplication ratio very good? When is it very efficient deduplicating? The formula to calculate the deduplication ratio or the deduplication rate is just use the logical size before deduplication and divide it through the physical size after deduplication. Yeah? That's the formula. Now there are some factors which have massive impact on the dedup rate. First of all, it's depending on the type of data. You know, there is data which could be deduplicated bad. If it's encrypted, it's almost impossible to do a deduplication of this kind of data. Well, the compressed data is a little bit better ratio. Yeah, if it's database data, it's a little bit better. File data, text files, VM snapshots are almost the best to deduplicate, I would say, because if you have VMs with always the same operating system, you could have very good deduplication ratios. So, but you need to know encrypted data could not be deduplicated, but you can use the SEP encryption to encrypt your backup data. That's still possible. Don't mix it up. Yeah? Don't mix these two different topics up. No deduplication for encrypted data, but it's possible to use encryption for the deduplicated data. So after deduplication, you can encrypt it. Yeah, and it's not good for compressed data like audios, videos, and images, as I've told you. But also important is the change rate. If you work a lot, you are very active with your software, then you have a lot of new blocks, and then the change rate gets lower and lower if you have a huge change rate. And then it's important to increase the logical size. Yeah, and this is something regarding the backup concept. If you only one full, the dedup ratio might be poor, well, 2-1. But if you do more fulls and you keep the fulls for a longer time, then the dedup ratio gets better and better. The more often you back up the same data. That's logical. Yeah, and the more data you have in your dedup store, the bigger the data store is, the better is the ratio, because there are lots of blocks already there and chances are high that the block is already stored. So if you compare deduplication with compression, then compression normally only leads to maybe factor of 2-1. Could be better sometimes, but not much. Dedup ratio should at least be 4-1, so that it's worth to invest in the deduplication effort, because sometimes you need different licenses and so on. So the additional hardware, so you have some cost on the deduplication side, and this could be well compared with the dedup ratio. So at least you need to have 4-1. Well, now some calculation examples for the dedup ratio to make this the sense of this value a little bit clearer. If you have a 10 terabyte set of front-end data, 10 terabyte on the front-end storage, and you do a backup, then the logical data is definitely 10 terabyte. The logical data is the equivalent of physical disk storage you would need for this backup data without deduplication. Okay? So deduplication is working, and on the physical storage you have maybe 5 terabyte. So maybe it's 2-1. Well, okay, half of the size. So the dedup ratio now is logical 10-5. It's about 2-1, 50% data reduction. Now you do the second full, maybe the next day or the next weekend. And the second full is now 10.1 terabyte. Now there are additional 10.1 logical data, because you back up these 10-1 terabyte. This would require 20.1 terabyte of physical storage if you would not use deduplication. Now the new blocks for the dedup store are the 100 gig, which are here more than the 10 terabyte. And if you have a change rate of maybe, we assume 2%, then of this 10 terabyte, there are also some deleted blocks, some new blocks, you know, the change rate. So we have 200 gig additional blocks because of the change rate. And this results in 300 gig new blocks for your dedup storage. Now the dedup storage has grown to 5.3 terabyte. Now you can compare the 20.1 to the 5.3, and this results in round about 4-1 dedup ratio, 75% reduction, roundabout. And if you do the third full, it's now 10.2 terabyte maybe. The logical data is just adding the 10.2. Now you have 30.3 of physical data. That's the storage you would need in a native data store. And the new blocks are now the 0.2 plus 0.2 for the 2% change rate. So it's 400 gig over here. And the physical size would be now 5.3 plus the 400 gig is 5.7 terabyte. And for the dedup ratio, you have to compare the 30.3 to the 5.7. And now you have a dedup ratio of 5.3 to 1 with 82% reduction, which is equivalent. So you see, as more backups you do of the same data, the better the dedup ratio grows, just to understand what this figure really means. Some scale-out concepts. You can add additional RDS doing the dedup work and having their own SI3 or store ones data store. It's the same with the store ones, because you can on the store ones also configure different data stores on the same dedup appliance. And this helps in terms of performance, because you can distribute the deduplication work. You can go beyond certain limitations of the size of the dedup store. However, it has some disadvantages, because you lose a little bit of the global deduplication. It needs more hardware, new RDS. The configuration in the backup server of the tasks is a little bit more complicated, especially if you also have replication, then it's more complicated. However, it could make sense if you divide your backup data regarding the backup type. You could have one storage, one RDS and one dedup store for your HANA data, SAP HANA. You could have another one for Oracle. You could have another one for BSR or virtual machines, because these kind of data are so different that they do not have or only a few common deduplication. So you do not lose a lot of global deduplication if you divide it by backup types of data. Yeah, just keep this in mind to optimize your dedup concepts a little bit. Yeah, now a little bit of a live demo, and I have already started the graphical user interface, our graphical user face over here. Maybe you are already, I'm pretty sure you are familiar with our graphical user interface. You see on the left side, we have the components. If you start to configure your environment, you have to specify which kind of clients you have and which data stores. And if we click on these data stores, you can see here we have a store ones configured data store. We have a SI3 dedup store configured. If you create a new data store, then here is the menu to choose between the different types of deduplication. With just one click, you can switch on deduplication on this data store. Just select the backup server or the RDS where you would like to add this data store, and then now it's not deduplicated. The data will be in native format, and now the data will be deduplicated in memory online before saving the data to disk. It's so easy to really switch on deduplication in our software. If it's a deduplication store, you could also replicate to S3, then put in your S3 bucket credentials over here. And if it's a store once, then you have to enter the name of the data store configured in the store once console. Just use exactly the same name here to name the data store, and provide all the credentials to have access to this data store on the store once and put in the account you have created and the password in the store once console. That's what you need over here. That's how it works in our software to switch on deduplication. And as you might have seen, that we have also specific data stores over here for the Cloud Bank storage to replicate the data from the store once into the cloud. Now, if we scroll a little bit to the right, you see we have here a dedup ratio of almost 13 to 1. Here is 5 to 1, 5.2 to 1. You know, it's depending on the data, the individual data we put on the store once and on this one. And overall, we could say that deduplication are effective the same on both alternatives. The store once based on variable block length is as much as effective as our own deduplication. So it's really a cool alternative over here. So for configuring this, you need well, no, first let me show you how to start some of these tasks. First of all, the replication task, if you would like to do some replication to another location, to another dedup store. And in this example, we have configured a catalyst copy, and you can see it copies from this media pool, which is one catalyst store, to another media pool, which is a second store once data store. And this is put into a schedule and runs on a regular basis every day or every hour or however you set up your backup concept. That's how you can set the replication tasks. And now if you would like to put some example, and we have some easy example. Over here we have the configured tasks. Let's just search. I know that I have a test backup, and this is pretty small here. This one, you know, this is the test backup on the backup server itself that's created during the installation to make sure that the installation has been successful. And with each task, we can do an immediate start. And the immediate start, we can do a copy because it's pretty small. And you have to select the media pool. Now, this media pool is for some tape storage, but we have the media pool which is relevant for the catalyst, for the store once. And now you have the option to switch on client-side, application-side deduplication, or otherwise it's deduplicated on the backup server itself. In this case, it's anyway the same computer. The backup server is also the client, so it doesn't make any difference in this case. Now, let's start this one. Start the backup. It started. Now we have to move fast because otherwise it's already done. Now you see there is an active task for this. If you scroll to the side, you see it's a copy backup. That's a dedup value, and it's a source side dedup we have switched on. Yeah, that's what you can see in this table. Now it's successful, so it's pretty fast, I know. And we can do the same again by using the SI3 deduplication immediate start. Now here is one with the SI3 with our own deduplication. We could use source side dedup, or in this case we don't use the source side dedup. Yeah, and then start writing on this media pool. Now the backup is started. Go back to the backups, and here you see now that refresh. Well, it's already successful. It's already gone through because pretty fast. And you see now, here was the media pool, the catalyst, the store once. Here's the media pool for our own SI3 deduplication. Here we have switched on source side dedup, here not. And you can see it from these values. Also, you can see here the deduplication ratio, almost 85% reduction of data. Yeah? That's how the deduplication works in our software, and you can have all the data if you just click on the dedup store and use the SI3 state. Here you see all the necessary information about the dedup store. Now with this ratio, overall dedup ratio, you have saved a lot of disk storage because it's a data reduction of almost 94% in total with this data store. And if you do the same with the store once, look at the store one state. Here we have now this dedup ratio overall, that's overall, yeah, and saved also 94% of data. Yeah, where are the hardware requirements? Just to give you this last hint, and I will show you this one. You know, we have a direct link into our wiki, wiki.sepsoftware.com. Yeah, and here you see our documentation on the after the quick start logo. Behind this logo, you will find the hardware requirements. That's important before you set up your deduplication, especially if you use SI3, our own deduplication. You see the requirements for CPU and RAM. That's all mentioned over here. Sesam requirements. Let's go down. You can see it's depending on the amount of data you deduplicate. Okay, and then under documentation, you also have some information over here. If you use the SI3 deduplication, how what about the deduplications concepts, some information as I have told you in this video, hardware requirements, how to configure it, how to configure source side dedup. So also the topics from my live demonstration you will find here in this description, and also the HPE store ones. That's over here, how the configuration works, how the backup can be configured, how the restore, replication, and so on. And we also have some cool videos available which shows how to configure a store once and the catalyst with our SEP sesam. So it's documented and described pretty well. So where are we now? I think this was the live demonstration, and as a last information for you, it's important that you never mix up different deduplication algorithm. So for instance, using SI3 on an NTFS deduplicated local storage is not good because the algorithms are not compatible with each other. It might even create some damage. First of all, it reduces your performance dramatically, deduplication of already deduplicated data, and it could even grow your data. So there might be a lot of damage if you mix up deduplication algorithm. That's not a good idea, I can promise you. So overall, I guess I could show and prove a little bit that SEP Sesam is really a very powerful backup software with a lot of deduplication capabilities for the best benefits of our customers.
Well, if you are now interested in knowing more about SEP, you can find detailed information about market, sales, product and company on our webpage. Profound technical information can be found in our large wiki online documentation. If there are any questions left, please do not hesitate to contact us via email to sales@sepsoftware.com. So, I'm pretty sure that I'll see you next time when you're back on Tube to boost your SEP knowledge again.